Welcome, everyone. This is the Parent Power Group. My name is Alberta Brinson Moore. I'm your facilitator this evening. And today we will have Alexis Coleman on how to homeschool your children. She's the executive director of the Urban Scholar Academy in Inglewood, California. But before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Wooten Center. The Al Wooten Jr. Youth Center is a nonprofit organization founded by Myrtle Faye Rump in 1990 in honor of her son killed in a drive-by shooting. The center provides free after-school and summer programs for students grades 3 to 12 in the South Los Angeles area. The Parent Power Group workshops are presented in partnership with the Green Foundation and other donors, which can be found at our website, www.wootencenter.org/donors. Our message for today is, as the season changed, COVID-19 remains. Vaccinate now to celebrate safely this holiday season. Also, being vaccinated against COVID-19 can save you 5 to 10 days of quarantining every time you get exposed. Don't wait, vaccinate. More and more kids are missing time at school because whenever they're exposed, they have to quarantine. So don't wait, vaccinate. Also, this is the time of year where the Covered California enrollment is up again. And Get Covered 2021. Cover up and get your health coverage. Pound Get Covered 2021, getcovered2021.org. And at this point, I'm gonna stop sharing and turn it over to our presenter, Alexis Coleman. And Alexis, let me, you're muted right now, but let me know.
Thank you. Oh, I'm gonna unmute, sorry. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Alexis Coleman. Let me see the light a little bit. Here we go. I am a certificated teacher, former LAUSD teacher for about 18 years, and I currently manage and co-founded Urban Scholar Academy. We're an academic nonprofit that specializes in providing enrichment activities for students after school. Also, we provide community service initiatives for students. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And the whole purpose of me being here today is to communicate with you on what actually is homeschooling. And so you're going to learn about that through the presentation I've actually prepared for you. Okay. So are you guys able to see the screen here? Okay, cool. All right. How to homeschool your child, presented by myself, certificated teacher, executive director, Urban Scholar Academy. Background about myself, like I said, my name is Alexis. I'm a former LAUSD teacher with 18 years of teaching experience. I founded 2012 Urban Scholar Academy with my husband. It's an Inglewood nonprofit organization dedicated to transform the lives of urban youth through academic enrichment and community service opportunities. We recently moved to a new building. It's 5,100 square foot space. It's located on the corner of Van Ness and Manchester. We moved before COVID actually hit in February of last year. Currently, we serve about 70 families come through our programs. The programs that we are currently offering, we have students who come through during the day for our independent study. We provide after-school assistance with homework assistance after school. We also provide tutoring in person, also online. And of course, we do seasonal camps, and all of the programs are year-round. Because of our commitment to the community in Inglewood, we were recently selected this year by the NFL in the Super Bowl 56 host committee as a champion legacy organization with 55 other organizations throughout the LA region. They actually put out the video of a little short documentary of our organization today on social media. Yeah, USA. So as a result of COVID-19 pandemic impact, and I'm sure many of you as parents have kind of noticed, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated learning challenges for students of color compared to learning challenges of their white peers that they're currently experiencing. The pandemic has forced the most vulnerable students into the least desirable learning situations with inadequate tools and support systems to navigate them. And as an educator, I always tell a lot of our parents, what I have found is that if a student is already at a deficit, the deficit is even widened. The achievement gap is now widened and become even larger. And so it becomes insurmountable oftentimes when you're trying to help mitigate that learning loss. And so that's what the pandemic has done. It has widened the learning achievement gap for many students who were already at a disadvantage prior to COVID-19 occurring. According to a research study conducted during October 2021 by McKinsey and Company, students on average started school about 3 months behind where we would expect them to be in mathematics. Students of color were about 3 to 5 months behind in learning. White students were about 1 to 3 months behind. In regards to reading, it was a 1 to 2 month learning gap. So this is just additional research to basically verify the reasonableness that, excuse me, COVID-19 has exacerbated the learning deficit that's already occurred in communities of color. How to mitigate learning loss. Although we can't control the virus, we can become informed on how we deal with its consequences. As parents, and I'm a mom, I have 2 sons, one is 16 and one is 12. As a parent, our immediate priority, as many of you guys already know, is to prevent even further learning loss. Yes, we can accept the notion that there was a learning loss for many of our children because of COVID-19, because a lot of our students had to learn remotely. But I guess it's our job as parents to help stop the learning loss that has occurred and to reverse its course. And so one way we can do that is we can explore resources in the community that we currently reside so that we can better support our children. And I kind of have identified 3 resources or 3 initiatives that a parent could explore to better support their child. Number 1, you can seek out tutorial support through local nonprofit agencies. I know that Al Wooten currently provides tutorial programs as well as ours. You can have your child return to school under strict COVID-19 guidelines, which is the traditional method. The alternative that many African-American families are now exploring is to improve your child's remote learning experience through non-traditional methods. So today I wanted to speak to you about the non-traditional methods of how you can help mitigate the learning loss for your child. And we explore those through 2 options, which is through homeschooling and independent study. So we kind of first, before we can even go into homeschooling, is better to kind of provide some context and some background as to what is classified as traditional methods of learning, what is classified as non-traditional methods of learning. So typically in a traditional method of learning, a child attends a school to receive direct instruction from a certificated teacher or paraprofessional. Okay, so the non-traditional ways of learning is one option is homeschooling. Within a home setting, a parent provides direct instruction in all content subject areas to their child throughout the day. The state of California requires that in order for you to get approval to homeschool your child, you have to ensure that your child is rendered 4 hours of instructional support throughout the day. So in homeschooling, the parent is responsible for purchasing and creating the curriculum. And of course, all 50 states in all 50 states in the United States permit homeschooling. It is allowed. So parents have that option. It's just that it requires a lot of structured planning. The other non-traditional way that students can learn is through independent study. Although the child is enrolled within a private school, he or she actually completes class assignments in a remote location. For example, this is provided by the school. The child is responsible for his or her own learning and the completion of work in a timely manner. So currently, we have students who are doing independent study at the academy during the day. And so what this looks like is the student is given a laptop and they have assignments. They have to go through their district portal. They have assignments and they have to complete those assignments by the end of the week. And our job, me as a teacher, is beneficial because There's a student now and she's doing independent studies since August. So she'll come to me, hey, Mrs. Coleman, do you mind helping me, support me with ABCD? And so I'm able to do that. However, I can't fully do it in all of its fidelity because I know that me being the executive director of a nonprofit, I'm dealing with 69 other families. I can't commit all of my time to supporting her. So like I said, I do what I can to support her during the day. And also too, we do have staff that support her after school. So we have 3 students currently in independent study in a program, and they basically come in the mornings and they stay until 6 p.m. I'm gonna stop. Should I keep going or is this a good time to ask are there any questions about any of the information I have provided to you guys at this point? Okay, all right, so we're gonna continue. Okay, so there's 2 types of homeschooling. There's structured homeschooling, where that's actually defined by the parent. The parent provides the curriculum, the parent provides the schedule. So let's say, okay, from 9 o'clock to 10, I'm gonna work with you and I'm gonna teach you ELA, English Language Arts. From 10 to 11, I'll work with you on a math content subject area, our standard lesson. And then we'll take a break. And then afterwards from 11 to 12, we'll do the math. 12 to 12:30, we'll take a lunch break. You and I will go to the park, and then we come back, and then we're going to transition into doing science or social studies. So a structured homeschool program is definitely defined by the parent. They provide the schedule. Unstructured is the second type of homeschooling, where it's up to the child that day to decide how they want their day to be. It's very eccentric. I've seen some models like this where I've worked with moms who I'm asking, hey, so, define your homeschool model at home. What does that model look like? They're like, oh, well, she kind of wants to just do reading. So we do reading. And so there's no structure, there's no set schedule. It's kind of ambiguous. And so these are the 2 types of homeschool models that many parents engage in. All right, so I don't want to really talk about the unstructured. I kind of want to spend some time talking about the structured homeschool piece. Okay, so I'm gonna move this over a little bit. All right, so the structured homeschool basically format involves, there's many different types. So there's 3 formats I'm going to present to you. The first is vendor. So let's just say hypothetically, you know what, I don't want to send my child back to school with a vaccine mandate, or I just feel like it's better if I provide instructional support myself. If that's the case, if you decide to go that way, then you have options. If you want to, I would prefer you do the structured homeschool format because you're able to have more favorable outcomes. So one format is through the vendor format. And this is where we work with a lot of our parents. So basically, you as the parent, you would enroll your child with a homeschool vendor. Some of the vendors out there on the market are iLead Schools, Blue Mountain, K-12, Inspire. We are currently a vendor. We currently collaborate, or we lend our services to students in the iLead homeschool program. And so the way it works is the vendor will give the parent instructional funds. So each child in the family will receive $1,400 a semester. Now these funds are allocated through the state, but the state trickles down the funding to the vendor. So each parent is allotted $1,400 a semester, and the parent basically can use those funds at any discretion to create their own homeschool program. Although you as the parent will provide the core instruction, which is math, reading, and science, you can take that $1,400, you can spend your funds on supplemental items, such as using the funds to pay for tutoring. If you feel like maybe as a parent, you feel like your strong suit is reading, but you're not that strong in math. So maybe you feel that your child could benefit from tutorial support in math. So you would take the $1,400 and you would say, hey, I want Al Wooten Enrichment Center to tutor my child. If you guys charge. If you go to a vendor that does charge, then you would allocate funding for that vendor. You can spend your funds on tutoring. You can spend your funds on sports, paying enrollment fees for that, enrichment activities. I've seen students spend their funds on karate classes, horseback riding. So the science classes at the California Science Center that costs like $1,000. So the money that you're allocated for is really, it's up to your discretion as to how you want to spend it. But in return for you receiving this funding from these vendors, you have to, of course, upload, and you have to work with a homeschool facilitator, which is a teacher that is assigned to you. Also, too, you have to upload samples, submissions of work samples. So if you say, you know what, you contact your facilitator for the vendor and say, hey, I want to use $500 to purchase this reading curriculum. Okay, cool. But you also have to show with evidence that the curriculum was implemented at home. Many of these programs like iLead, Blue Mountain, K-12, and Inspire, there is a long waiting list because when COVID happened, a lot of parents pivoted. And so now you have a lot of parents who want to do the homeschool model and who may actually need the additional funding to implement it to its fidelity. They just have to wait. It's a waiting list. I will say this though, that because so many parents did return to school, the waiting list may not be so extensive. So that's just an option to look into. The other structured homeschool format is virtual learning, where you basically, the child logs on with an online program, and then the instructor, normally a certificated teacher, provides instruction in that core subject area. So sometimes you can do these online classes through your vendor. So let's say you're an iLead, you're enrolled as an iLead school student. The parent can say, you know what, I want to spend $500 on an online class that California Science Center is offering on Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 to 3. So you have, it's at your discretion how your funding is spent. And of course, you have parents who decide not to go that route. They don't want the micromanagement of the vendors telling them what to do with their funding, telling them how things have to be verified. So some parents actually do what you call unit study, where they purchase these curriculum and thematic-based units, and then they provide instructional support for themselves, with their child, but they have to use their own funds. So these are just, like I said, these are formats that you could employ, or you could kind of research to figure out if you're interested in leaning towards homeschooling, if this is a fit for you. I would definitely utilize the structured homeschool format as comparable to the unstructured. I'm going to pause and ask, are there any questions so far? If you guys need any clarification on the difference between the vendor and virtual online and unit studies.
I definitely see the benefit of the structured, especially for those parents that are not a teacher. It'll be different if you were a teacher and you decided, I'm not going to be a teacher anymore, I'm going to homeschool my kid. But I know so many people aren't teachers, and they didn't study to know what their kid needs to be doing at what age, what grade. So I definitely see the benefit of, the structured, and my kids would be out of control unstructured. They can't decide.
I know. I feel like most parents tend to lean towards a structured homeschool format. And actually too, next to my presentation, I'm going to talk about my experience. I did homeschool my son. So I'll talk about that. Okay, so I now want to kind of talk about the pros and cons of homeschooling. So the pros are, of course, it's family oriented. It gives you a chance to deepen your relationship with your child, or to reconnect with your child. Oftentimes as moms, working moms, we get so busy. And sometimes we just get caught up in the mundane routine of life. It's like kid goes to school, you see your child after school, what's your homework? Okay, great, eat dinner, it's bedtime. So this kind of breaks up the monotony of that. And so it does promote a sense of family oriented, being oriented with your family. Also too, there's a level of flexibility. You get to really kind of design how you want, or what you want your child to learn. There's a level of freedom in that. It's not so rigid, where traditional schools say, okay, at this time we're going to do this time we're going to do this. And you also too, I noticed with a lot of our African-American homeschool moms we work with at the Academy, a lot of times they say, hey, Ms. Coleman, I need some recommendations for some culturally relevant literature I want my child to use. And so I give them a whole list of different stuff. But you get to control your own curriculum, get to design it from scratch, which I think is really dynamic. And of course, also too, is cost effective. You know, you don't have to pay for the private schooling. You can kind of utilize and be creative. If you decide to go through the vendor route, then of course, you can use those instructional funds that have been allocated to buy the curriculum that you choose. And also too, I just want to give you guys some statistics. There's a higher success rate for students who actually get homeschooled. And 11 out of 14 research studies conducted by the Journal of School of Choice, they identified 11 out of 14 research studies, homeschool students outperform conventional students. And also Harvard University did a study on the outcomes of homeschool students. They identified that homeschool students had higher GPAs and transfer GPAs as comparable to their peers. So they would have an average of a 3.7 is in relative to students who weren't homeschooled who had a 3.5. And I can attest to that because I'll tell you my journey with homeschooling. The con of homeschooling is it's a lot of, I'm just speaking from experience. I homeschool my son. It's a lot of time management. Your day has to be very highly structured, to where it's hard to pivot, and because you want to make sure that ABC gets taught, because also too, if you go through a vendor, you have to be accountable at the end of the school year because they have to do assessments for your children so that they can know where the child is functioning. Also too, a con is there's a loss of income for the family because someone has to be home to teach this child on a full-time basis. And I've met with moms who've done it. Well, I'll give you the tale of two moms right now that I'm working with. They're both homeschool moms. One mom, we're working with her children, and because it's not as structured as it should be at the house, and because the schedule just kind of fluctuates every day, we are now seeing the results of what the impact is to that. So her children are not where they should academically be. They're 2 to 3 grade levels behind. Whereas there's another homeschool mom who's been doing this for 9 years, equally the amount of time that we're working with. Her children are on grade level because she has a set structure, and she has a set, it's very structured, and she has a set schedule. So like I said, I've seen on both ends of the spectrum where it's kind of not unstructured. You see the outcomes when we test the kids. This is vastly different. Also too, another con oftentimes is socialization. That's why so many homeschool families contact us. They're like, hey, Ms. Coleman, so we want our child to participate in your summer camp or your winter camp, or, you know, can you give me any recommendations for things outside of that you guys also do? So oftentimes, if we're at capacity, I'll recommend them to other organizations that offer enrichment classes, dance, karate, things like that, because it's important for children to be well-rounded. And in their development of becoming their whole self, we want to also make sure that they incorporate social skills, which is very imperative to their learning and their growth as a human being. Now I'm going to kind of give you a perspective through 3 lenses. I'm going to talk about homeschooling as a parent. I'm going to talk about homeschooling as a teacher. I'm also going to talk about homeschooling as a business owner. So as a parent, in 2019, I homeschooled my youngest son, Malachi. He's now 7th grader, during his 4th grade year, and I used the iLead program. Mind you, we were a vendor for iLead since 2017, I think. I was like, oh, let me try this out. So I tried it out for my son, and I was like, okay. Now, the only reason why he did well was because I'm a teacher, right? Like Alberta said, if I was not a teacher and didn't know exactly what to teach, because I had taught 4th and 5th grade for like 18 years, then he would have not done well. So this opinion is slightly biased because I knew what to teach, right? So I think my experience, like I said, it was initially because I homeschooled him from October because he was in a traditional school. I'll never forget the day I went to his school for observation. The class was out of control. The teacher was yelling at the students. It was just no discipline. And the homework that he was coming home with was just, it was non-academic, it was busy work. And so I said, okay, I told myself, my husband, if I leave my son in this situation, he's not going to thrive. And I cannot be a witness to that. So I took him out of that school that day, and I decided I'm going to homeschool him. Because I had the mornings, because our programs are after school. So I had a little bit of time in the mornings to be able to teach him before we transitioned to our after school programs for the academy. So initially the first month of October, it was a struggle because, this is my son, and normally he sees his mommy in a different light, but now I was his teacher. And so that was an interesting transition for him. Nonetheless, though, he ended up adapting to the situation over time. And so as we transitioned to second semester, he actually did much better. We had to meet every month with a educational facilitator, which was another teacher through iLead. She came to my house, she came to my place of business, and she would say, okay, Ms. Coleman, I want to see your work samples. So I would show her work samples of things we have been working on. She would also give me recommendations. And so we had a very good relationship. Her name was Miss Lee. And she said, Malachi has to be held accountable for his learning. So he needs to take the MAP testing, which is really equivalent to what students take in traditional setting. You guys call it the SBAC. In homeschool setting, they call it the MAP. And so it's Mastery Assessment Performance Test, which is also provided by the state for private learners. He took the assessment and he had the highest score in his cohort. Now, this is the first time he had actually scored at a high level of proficiency, because in the other previous years in his traditional school, he was not performing like he should. So I do attribute the fact that because his learning program was personalized, because he had individualized support, which is really the ideal method of learning, he thrived his second semester. Currently, right now, we put him back into regular school. So he is at Dana Middle School and he's doing pretty good there. Okay, so that was my experience as a parent. I want to share my experience as a teacher. During the height of, when COVID started and everyone had to go to remote learning or distance learning, there was a group of moms in our program who said, hey, Mrs. Coleman, so we know that you're a teacher. We want to know if you would be interested in teaching a pod. I said, okay, sure, right? Not knowing what it was going to entail. So I ended up teaching a pod of fifth grade students at the academy all day. Now, I just want to preference this a little bit. This is slightly biased because I learned that it really wasn't homeschooling. Homeschooling means that the parent has to provide instructional support. This had actually morphed itself into individualized and actually individual instruction, like a private school. So if I had to do it again, I would say no, because it really wasn't the format of what traditional homeschool looked like. And actually, some of our iLead parents who use us for tutoring and stuff like that, they couldn't even participate in the homeschool model we had last year because it wasn't supplemental. I was providing core instruction. Now, the cool thing about the homeschool pod that I did teach at the academy last year, they actually improved 2 to 3 grade levels according to iReady assessments. But that's because they had a full-time teacher, and it was 3 or 4 of them. So I told the students, this is the best ideal situation you'll ever get. You will never get this much of a personalized learning experience ever. And I said, take advantage of it. So they did. They thrived, right? So, but it was good though for them because now, since they've been we put them back into their schools. One of the students actually now is on grade level. She made up a 3-year deficit. So the homeschool piece for her for a year was phenomenal. She was able to play catch up, right? And now she's thriving in her regular school. And then we have 2 of the students one of the students went back into homeschooling in the fall, and he's not doing well because he's not supervised, and the internet is all of his to explore. So now his mom is putting him back into school. So I will say this, part of homeschooling involves a lot of supervision, a lot of structured supervision, a lot of detail with instructional plans for the child. And of course, my experience as a business owner, we started supporting homeschool families in 2018. And so oftentimes I'll provide consultation to homeschool families, particularly African-American families. And it's rare to meet African-American homeschool families. And when you do, their perspective is very interesting because normally I'm used to working with parents in their traditional setting or parents who adopt the traditional method of education, which is public private school. But like I said, every homeschool family is different, and you try to support these families in this non-traditional way of learning. I'm gonna move on. I will say this academic year, we no longer provide the homeschool program because we didn't have it in our budget to have a homeschool teacher. And I felt like some parents weren't doing their part. It was the heavy lifting was on me. And oftentimes I had to have a lot of conferences with the parents, like, okay, I'm doing this, I need you to be doing this. And so things just fell through the gap. And I said, okay, this is not a program I think we should implement next moving forward. But we will continue to support homeschool families. So homeschool families will contact us to use their funds for us to do tutoring or use their funds for our camps. So we support them in that capacity. I'm going to stop before I continue. Are there any questions about anything I've said thus far in regards to homeschooling so far? The battery is.
I had Alex at one point who was saying, that I worked with, I'm homeschooling my child. I'm like, you're at work. You need to be at home to homeschool your child. Somebody, a parent, a grandparent, or somebody needs to be at home. That's independent study. That's not homeschool.
Right. Correct. There is a difference. There is a big difference. I'm trying to turn on my camera. Okay, here we go. Just trying to charge my laptop. It's dying. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, so homeschooling is, like I said, homeschooling means you have to be the teacher. You are the teacher. And independent study means that they have work given by a teacher, but the students doing their own teaching. No one is teaching them but themselves. So they're being provided the curriculum. Homeschooling, you have to get your own curriculum. You have to figure it all out. So now I'm going to go over the steps of what are the steps to homeschool my child. I hope this thing doesn't die. My charger, Alberta, just doesn't want to work. I'm trying not to get disconnected here. I'm going to turn off my camera so I can try to fix it. Can you give me like 1 minute so I can fix my charger? Okay. Oh gosh, it doesn't work. Come on.
Yeah, and when she come back, we'll talk about the question in chat about does the homeschool curriculum follow the Common Core curriculum? And technology is wonderful until it isn't. I swear we do be having some challenges.
Okay, I think I'm gonna hold my charger. It just tells me to get a new charger. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna continue. What are the steps to homeschooling my child? So number one, you have to disenroll your child from their current local school. And you have to complete a private school affidavit with the state of California. And I have this link here. It's an easy form. It's an electronic form. You just kind of declare yourself as a private school, as a parent. And then it's going to register in the database for the state. And of course, they'll send a copy to the school. But sometimes things don't get sent to the school. So it's up to you as the parent to contact your child's former school saying, hey, I'm going to now be providing private instruction for my child in a home setting. And then, of course, as a parent, you have to decide on the format of if you want to do a structured, unstructured, and if you do structured homeschooling, are you going with a vendor, or are you going to create your own curriculum and do by your own units, kind of like, design it by your own creativity. Regardless of whatever format you commit to, you just have to do the program. Homeschool intends fidelity. It's a marathon, not a race. And I always tell parents consistency yields results. And if you decide that homeschooling isn't the method of education you would like to pursue, let's say you've done it, you did it for about a semester, you're like, okay, this is not the way I want to go, continue. You can always pivot and re-enroll your child back into a traditional school. And so wherever you left off will be where they are placed back into the school. So it's like a trial and error. And then finally, I wanted to provide you guys some resources, some homeschool resources. There was some, when I was homeschooling my son, and also too, in conversations with our homeschool families that we service, they always would give me, hey, Ms. Coleman, check out these Facebook groups. And so I did as a homeschool parent. I ended up joining 3 of these groups during my homeschool journey for that whole year. And it was interesting because they would share information I didn't know about. They would share books that I would, if I was looking for a specific book to, do literature with my child, if I was looking for a new vendor, like a curriculum, extracurricular activity, I would go there. So it was a great outlet for me, and I was able to build some long-lasting friendships because of that. And that is my presentation on homeschooling. I was going to ask, are there any questions in regards to anything I've said throughout the presentation? Oh, somebody had some in the chat. Sorry, guys. So, Alberta, if my laptop dies because it's just acting funky right now.
Well, we're toward the end. There was one question in the chat, and I wanted to get to it before we left. Is, does the homeschool curriculum follow the Common Core curriculum?
It depends if you do structured or unstructured. If you do structured curriculum, then the vendor, such as iLead, Blue Mountain, Inspire, then yes, they will adhere to the Common Core. In fact, when I was using the iLead program, before I could even get approval to purchase or use my funds, I had to get approval from my facilitator, and she had to make sure that the curriculum matched the standards that she had. There was always checks and balances.
During COVID, my son took some classes at Trade Tech, and there were quite a few homeschooling parents. It was more middle school and high school that kind of merged some of those classes into their classes, since they're free. Actually, they're free. And they had teachers the whole time. So I saw some of the kids that were in my son's classes. They were part of like a homeschool group, so that was definitely interesting.
Yeah, there's, like I said, there's actually there's this new movement of Black families coming together to do this homeschool network. There's one of our grant writers, she's working with there's a group called San Francisco Black Homeschool Moms. Like I said, it's a growing movement. And so I think it's really cool because it allows African-American families to start thinking about non-traditional ways of learning. Like oftentimes growing up, I was always thought the education was relegated to brick and mortar. You go to school at this time and then you go home. But now, because of so many options given to more affluent families, they're now being allowed to do it in our neighborhoods. So I think it's just really figuring out what method you want to employ, and then whatever you do decide to do, that you do it to, like I said, it's fidelity, that you do it. Because one thing a child doesn't need is you to say, okay, I'm going to start it, and then you just don't finish it, or you abruptly finish it, and then the child's confused, and then they have a learning loss even more. So that's just my input.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to share my screen once again. For those that missed it, we went over some of our COVID safety tips. But I want to give you some COVID information that it may help you or somebody you know. Act Now COVID Help Hub. Do you need COVID-19 support? We have our QR code, and feel free to contact the Green Foundation, and their telephone number is right here, 323-229-3411, or email info@thegreenfoundation.net. We appreciate you being here, and next week we'll have a parent power group on healthy meal options for the holidays like Christmas and Kwanzaa and all the winter holidays that are coming up. So I'm really excited. It's actually my son's culinary teacher, so he's becoming a really good cook, and I'm experiencing firsthand what's going on there. But once again, I want to thank Alexis for being here. And also I want to remind everyone, if you can, please type your name and zip code in the chat. We would greatly appreciate that. And if you have any additional questions, definitely email us at the Wooten Center. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And I will stop the recording.
Thank you, Alberta.